So recently I got a question that was asked to me, which kind of inspired me to make this video and do a lot of research. And that question was, how long have you been living in Chicago for? Now, obviously, I got this question many times while living here, especially since I moved from New York. So people have asked me, how long have I spent living in Chicago? And, a lot of the times I never really thought about it. Most of the time I would be like, oh, it's only been like a year. It's only been like 2 years since I've been living here and whatnot. But then somebody asked a follow-up question, which was actually the main inspiration for making this video. And that follow-up question was, have you been living in Chicago longer than you've lived in New York? And as of this year, it officially makes my time spent living in Chicago longer than living in New York, which is honestly kind of crazy for me. Because for one, it doesn't feel like it's been that long since I've been living here. And that's mainly because like as I get older, time goes fast. So like I just don't notice it. But on the second hand, as a person that has moved around a lot, growing up, it's crazy to think that like I've lived in all these places and now it's getting to the point where Chicago is slowly rising up in the places that I've lived the longest. Obviously, it might not be a crazy feeling for others because the people around me, especially in Chicago and even in New York, they've been living there their entire lives. And so, compared to me that just moved in, everything's new. And then like after a couple years, you finally like settle in. And then it's like, am I getting to that point settling in here at Chicago, And so the main inspiration for this video with that question was I actually wanted to document and see how long did I actually spend living in Chicago, in New York, and in California, and the past places that I all lived in, and compare them and see how long of my life have I actually spent in these places. A lot of research went into this, okay? And by research, I mean asking my parents and also looking at old pictures and seeing when the exact date was when we moved. Just bear with me. Yeah, time to get into a little backstory of the places that I lived. Oh, the places Nathan goes. All right, so documenting my life from the day that I was born. In total, I have lived in 4 states, and within those states, I've lived in 6 different cities, and 7 different homes, I guess you could call it. I'll explain later what that means. But anyway, starting from the way beginning, I was born in Richmond, Virginia in September 6, 2001. Specifically in Henrico County at the Henrico Hospital, which is, as you can see, it's right here. At the time, my dad was studying at graduate school. And so him and my mom and my older sister were living in Virginia where he was going to school, and I was born there while he was attending school. We only lived there for a little bit though, not that long. In total, it was only 216 days. After my dad graduated, we moved back. They were originally living in California before they moved to Virginia for my dad studying, and then after he graduated, they moved back to California. I don't have much memories of this place. Because obviously I was just born, I barely even turned 1, so I can't really speak much about it. The only thing I can say is that I was born here. And then after about 216 days, we moved to California. Now, the first city that I lived in California was in a city called Norwalk. And I was living there for roughly about 323 days. This is just a rough estimate. It's not the exact number. This obviously is the earliest picture that I found of me at the Norwalk house, and there's my sister next to me. I also don't have much memories about this place. I'm not gonna speak much about it because I was like I was only like 1 by the time I was living here. There's a lot of pictures that were taken at this place when I was looking back at it, but honestly, I just don't remember this house that well. But yeah, not much to say about this, obviously. So moving on, the next place we lived in was in La Mirada. After living in Norwalk for a short amount of time, we moved right to La Mirada and spent a longer time there. I do remember this house a little bit more than the Norwalk house from pictures, but I was still very young, so not much memories. Like I don't remember specific things like how the house looked and what my bedroom was like. My younger sister was born while we were living at this house. But yeah, not really going to speak much about this one either because not that many memories, but still very relevant because we did spend around 2 years here, actually. Roughly 2 years. That's just a rough estimate. But yeah, moving on to the next house. Now, this place is actually more relevant in my life because I spent the most amount of time here. And this was in Brea. I believe when I started to enter into public education, that's when we moved to Brea. So I think when I was starting preschool or kindergarten, that's when I lived at this house. This house obviously changed a lot. I went to visit it back in a couple times when I went back to visit California. It changed a lot, but it's still home for me. I still remember how everything looked. Basically, the majority of my life was spent living in this Brea house here. And yeah, I basically went to preschool up until the sophomore year, halfway through the sophomore year of high school, while I was living in this Brea house. And so a lot of people, when they ask me where I'm from, I usually say New York because that was the most recent place that I've lived in. But originally I did grow up in California, and as you can see with the amount of days that I spent living in this Brea house.
Hi, this is Future Nathan here. Just wanted to add something quick to the Complaining Nathan timeline. So during the 2008 to 2009 era, there was somewhat of a short filler arc where I spent a little bit of time in New Jersey. At the time, my dad was working at New Jersey at a church, and basically we went to come visit him during the times that we had off during the summer breaks and the winter breaks. And as a family, we were planning to eventually move over to New Jersey with my dad, but we were unable to sell our house at Brea. So my dad ended up quitting that job and just moved back with us to California. Now the reason I'm still bringing this up despite it being a filler arc is because the amount of time that I spent there in New Jersey, obviously this is just a rough estimate, but you could subtract the days I spent in California and add them to the New Jersey time. Also, I did make a couple friends there that I'm still somehow friends with on social media, so overall a short filler arc, but still relevant nonetheless. Makes me wonder, what if we actually did move to New Jersey and we stayed there? Maybe I wouldn't be in Chicago, maybe I would still be in New Jersey. You never know. Alright, end of flashback. Now back to you, past Nathan.
After the first couple months of sophomore year in October of 2016, we all moved, my family, all moved to New York, specifically in Great Neck of New York. And there I spent the rest of my high school years and the first year of college in New York. This picture was the first picture that we took while we were in New York. We didn't have our house yet, but we had McDonald's. I still remember this day so very vividly. And yeah, New York for me was, because it's so recent, it's only been like a couple years since I moved out of New York, so it's still very much in my memory compared to growing up in California and stuff like that. The grand total of 1380 days. This is actually more exact because these are the exact pictures, and I distinctly remember the days that we spent, or the days that we moved here in New York and moving out of New York. So yeah, just a quick tangent though. I did live in 2 different houses while I was living in Great Neck. The first year while we were living in Great Neck, my family was living in a small apartment, and it was very small and cramped, and none of us enjoyed it. But after that year, we found a bigger house, not that much bigger, but just a little bit bigger. And so we moved to that place. It was still in Great Neck though. Walking distance was maybe only like a 20 to 30 minute walk away. The house was closer to school though, so I did enjoy that because I could always just run to school instead of taking the bus. But I do notice that a lot of my friends in New York typically move to someplace else, but still in the same city. Whether it be for financial reasons or just to move into a bigger place or just location. I feel it's very commonplace for people to do that in New York. And so that happened to me while I was living in New York. Did it really affect the amount of time I spent in New York? Not really, but I feel like it's still relevant to bring up to show that I still did move while we were living in New York, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, overall, we were in New York for almost 4 years until July 2020. That's in the midst of the pandemic after my freshman year of college. During the pandemic, we moved to Chicago and currently still living in Chicago up to this present day. So as of the recording of this video, I have spent 1,535 days here living in Chicago. This is my first Insta story that I took while I was driving with my dad, bringing all the supplies, the luggage, from New York all the way here to Chicago. So yeah, that was fun. Now if we look at all the calculations I made on the screen that I did in my head beforehand, we can see that we spent these amount of days spent in Virginia and California and New York and Chicago, and Chicago is now more than New York, which is, like I said before, is just so crazy to me. I think it's just weird that despite spending the most time in California, I still consider myself a New Yorker and still say that I'm from New York. But now I've spent more time in Chicago, so it's like, can I call myself a Midwesterner now? Am I a Chicagoan? If you told me back in 2020 when I first moved here to Chicago that I would still be living here after 4 years, I would have not believed that, because honestly, I truly saw myself either moving out after college graduation, going back to New York or going back to California, or just somewhere that's not here. Do I still have those plans in mind? Not sure. Who knows? I could see myself living in someplace new in the next couple of years. So we'll see. Another question I get asked after the how long have you lived in Chicago for is which place do you like more out of the places you've lived? And I would always answer with California because ever since moving to New York, I always just wanted to move back to California. At the time when I first moved to New York, it was just a terrible living spot. I was unfamiliar with New York. The time that we moved during the school year was just not a great time to move. At the time I hated New York, and yeah, no offense to New York as a state, obviously. I look back on it now with fond memories and all my friends are still there. So it's not so bad now that I look back at it, but just at the time it was just like, I was not enjoying life. Unfortunately though, I was not unable to visit California until post-pandemic. When I did eventually visit it, it just didn't feel the same. I mean, sure, I didn't expect it to be exactly one for one from how I was growing up, but after that rush of nostalgia faded, you know, I was just left with just this state, this city, this place that I used to call home. It's kind of bittersweet, and I just had a sense of just longing for childhood and longing for all those years lost, you know, that I could have had if I just continued living in California. But that brings me to my next point. Out of all the places that I lived in, which place is my true home? Home, sweet home, a place that I hold so dear to my heart. I honestly searched for it so long, and I always thought in my heart and in my head that it was always California. After that long journey of visiting California again and realizing that home is no longer there, I couldn't convince myself that like Brea wasn't my home. I just hated myself for romanticizing the fact that if I just moved back, then all my problems would disappear. It was just a hard realization, knowing that I had nowhere to go because like I've hyped up this place as home for so long, and you know, coming back and seeing that it's not home, yeah, it did a couple things to me. The close friends that I made in California growing up, most of them moved out of California or they don't live in Brea anymore. And I don't keep in contact with a lot of them, so it just isn't the same anymore. And then moving into New York or Chicago for the first time, where friend groups and social status is already established before me even moving in, it's just very hard to assimilate myself into that culture because of already what the established social norms are. I always felt envious of that. Ever since I've moved into like a new city, I've always felt envious of like how all these people grew up with each other and were close friends, and they have that closer bond despite me being also close with them, but the amount of time that I spent with them was a lot shorter than like obviously them spending time with each other. Yeah, the time it took for me to quite settle into these places, it took a long time, but looking back on it, it's kind of amazing how far like I've been on this journey. When I went to visit New York for the first time after moving to Chicago back in 2022, I was telling my friends that New York was the same, and like it almost as if like I was coming back home and Chicago was the vacation rather than New York was the vacation. I guess what I'm trying to say is that like the places that I once called home, they're never gonna be the way that they used to be, because I've tried to replicate that feeling for so long, and I've never gotten even close to it. So like home will never be the same for me. But that's okay because I've come to accept that. For me personally now, home isn't about where it is in terms of location or what physical objects there are in the house or whatnot. But home for me will only be considered home if I accept it as a home in the first place. Once I can truly appreciate it as a home despite all of its flaws and its differences, then will be a home for me. Yeah, I'm thinking about it in my head. That didn't really make sense, but you guys get what I'm saying, right? Like take New York for example. When I first moved into New York, I always considered California my home, and I just did not enjoy my living spaces there. It took me a long time to settle in, like almost 2 to 3 years. And the moment when I accepted that this was the way life was gonna be in New York, and I won't be able to visit California in a while, so I'll just have to live with it, was when I think I truly accepted that like this is gonna be home, and this was home, and it felt like home. Little did I know that in a couple months later, I would be moving out to a different place and have to go through that whole process again of just settling into this place. But it honestly did take a long time to settle down here in Chicago. You know, after all those years of just living in the pandemic and trying to get out of the pandemic and just accepting what I truly have in this home, I think I finally was able to settle into this place, and I can say that this is home now. For my old California friends, you guys shaped my childhood. You guys are my childhood, actually. Though there may never be a chance for things to go back the way it used to, I'm okay with where things are now, and now I just look back on it with fond memories. But thank you for just making my childhood just the best childhood that I could possibly have. For my New York chumps, thank you for just making my youth and my adolescence period just the best times of my life. And I hope to see you guys all soon. Whenever I visit again, sometime in the future. I don't know. It's been a while since I traveled to New York, but hey, maybe I might come visit again. Who knows? And finally, for the Chicago people, thank you for doing your utmost to make me feel welcome here in a place that I, didn't consider my home. There have been times when I feel like I didn't really belong here, and I would always just be alone and keep to myself because of those thoughts. But now I feel at peace now that this is home, and I thank you for always including me. Yeah, it's really all because of you guys that I really feel like this is home now. So thank you for that. All right, that's enough now. Okay, this is gonna be the last serious video that I make for a while, hopefully, because I wasn't planning on making this video. Just the thought appeared in my head, and then I got into the research and started looking at old photos and stuff like that, and I just want to make more funny skit type of videos and stuff like that. But these ideas keep popping into my head, these serious topics, and oh my gosh. Look forward to more unserious shenanigans soon, because, I'm done making these serious videos for a while. Hopefully I can go back to the stuff that I want to make. Anyways, outro time. Thank you once again, everyone, for being part of my life, and thank you everyone so much for watching this video. Hope you guys all have a good day or night. Make sure to use the bathroom before going to sleep at night, and drink lots of water after waking up from a long nap. And I hope to see you guys all in the next video, whenever that's gonna be. Okay, bye.